Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now, here's your host, Jack Moore.
Okay, welcome to More to Consider. I have on Ganesh, Datta from India, who is doing a lot of podcasting here in the U.S. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing absolutely fine. How about you?
Great. So Ganesh reached out to my producer to do a show on the JFK assassination, and I kind of took it everywhere else. It's on me, but I did a show with him, and now he's come back to do a show with me. So I'm very interested always to talk to people with different perspectives and different places in the world and things like that. So we want to kind of talk about current affairs. From your view, where you are, this early in the morning for you and it's late at night for me, what do you think about the world right now? What do you think about where we are
Yeah.
as a world?
Well, it feels like it's like 1941 or 45 again,
Yeah.
where everybody is amped up to go against each other and regular people don't care about it, right? But of course, there are bigger machineries at work and they want to go, you know. And it's not only in one or two places in the world, but it's like majority of place throughout the world, throughout every continent feels like that.
Yeah, I'm much older than you, so I've probably got 2 lifetimes on you, but
Hmm.
I grew up in a world which I guess looking back, and I mean, I've had this conversation with many people, guests, and I have a good friend that we do a lot of shows together, at least at the time when I was born in 1962. So growing up, I mean, okay, I remember King being assassinated, Bobby Kennedy. I miss JFK. I was alive, but I don't remember it, but I studied it, of course. But you know, the riots, I remember the Democrat convention in Chicago in 68, Bobby Kennedy being assassinated, like I said, King being assassinated, the Vietnam War on the TV every night.
Hmm.
And that is the world that I grew up in. But, you know, I'm 6 years old and then 7, 8 years old.
Hmm.
And so I thought things were sort of violent. And that's
Hmm.
kind of the way the world, I mean, because, you know, when you're a kid, you're like, well, that's what happens. If you're a political leader, you get shot at, et cetera, et cetera. Then
Yeah.
we go through the 80s and it seems to be a pretty good time in the U.S. I mean, things seem to quiet down and it leads to, quote unquote, the ending of the Cold Wars. The Soviet Union, by the end of the decade, is on the verge of collapse. So then all those things I heard growing up, you know, the possibility of an atomic weapons or nuclear exchange had
Hmm.
dissipated. At least that's what we thought, right? Then we go into the
Yeah.
90s and there's conflict. But then, of course, 9/11 changes everything here in the U.S. I mean, that's 2001, of course. And it changes the perspective. And then what the U.S. has done, it appears, since the end of World War II, being involved in everyone else's business throughout the world, has continued to escalate to whatever end and where we are today. What's going on now, though? Let me throw this out there. I want your take on it, too. I think that COVID was a huge marker in this sense. I had never imagined, although I know it was probably going on, our news is manipulated, certainly our leaders are manipulated, etc., or the messages we get, the answers we get from media, I think has always been manipulated, but we didn't know it maybe as much. I think what changed for me drastically was when I started to see people, like I could say, question the COVID regime and mask and vaccination, you know, mandates, etc. If there was any questions brought up, they were shut down. You know, medical
Yep.
doctors were shut down. That's when I kind of went to, this is 1984, the novel. Like we're living Brave New World. Like, you read
Yep.
those things in high school and you kind of had an
Hmm.
idea that these were warning messages to mankind about mind think and, you know, this kind of
Hmm.
mind control. And then I'm watching it happen. So that's when I really got scared because I thought the public discourse had completely been destroyed. So from your side of the world, what were your
Yeah.
feelings about that?
I would say, yeah, COVID was the kind of great reset to the ecosystem that was working very well, right? At
Yeah.
least prior to COVID, it was like a very well oiled machine where you could shut down people who, however you wanted to. And I guess once COVID came in, it kind of messed with that because then the healthcare system that we were supposed to be dependent on was kind of divided into two, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was this tribe of people saying, take the vaccine, follow the mandates. we don't know what this is, but we hope this works. And there was this whole another tribe who were like, they exactly know what they're doing, right? And they exactly know what's going to happen, but they want it to happen because of, capitalism, right? And then we saw this, especially in Canada. I still remember when the doctors that came out, right, against the COVID vaccines and stuff, their licenses were taken away.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
remember that? So it was like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like, that's not supposed to happen. Like, science is it's an experiment, right? So because
It's not a
even,
religion. It's not a religion. And it was becoming a religion. It was
yes,
like if you,
no,
yeah.
I agree. And more than a religion, it was almost becoming a cult.
Right. I mean, yeah, what the dimension of what, but I'm saying there began to be high
Yeah.
priest of the religion, and any
Yep.
heresy would lead to,
Hmm.
excommunication from the society type of thing.
Yeah. And also it became very apparent that the experts that we thought knew everything apparently did not know everything, right?
Or they benefited greatly from some of what
Yep.
was happening. That was always a question too. But
Yep.
yeah, let
And
me say this real
like,
quick. The
yeah.
most frightening thing I saw was a hearing with Senator Ron Johnson out of Wisconsin, and he did a hearing, and I think it was even during the Biden administration. I think it was probably after the midterms in 2022, maybe. But
Hmm.
he runs this hearing, and he has these doctors coming in and saying what they had gone through. Many had lost their privileges to practice in certain hospitals. And one of the scariest ones was this one doctor said he knew a woman, probably early 60s, that had an 86, 87-year-old mom.
Hmm.
And she calls panic. I think mom just tested positive for COVID. And he said, go to CVS, go to one of these pharmacies, get this, don't look anyone in the eye, don't turn around, do not call a hospital or a doctor, any other doctor, do
Hmm.
not take her to the hospital, she'll be dead in a day. So I don't want to say he prescribed something. She was well in 48 hours, and she was 87 years old. And he was telling the senator, he goes, had she gone to the hospital and they
She was
followed
dead.
she should have been dead.
Yep.
And he goes, I
Yep.
had to kind of secretly tell her, go get the medication. Don't tell anyone. Don't look back. Grab it. Take it
Yep.
back home to mom and spend the next 2 days with her. 48 hours, she was okay. And I'm like, if doctors are saying that, we're living in a really scared dynamic or
Well,
dimension.
I still remember, even in India, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
doctors were like family doctors, right? So they were like, do not let hospitals put your people on ventilators.
Exactly.
They were like, that's a sure shot that you're going to die, like
Yes.
100%. And there was this whole resistance of that, right? But thankfully in India, it's like we really don't care about systems. I don't know. We don't we are not kind to authority or being told what to do, and I think that kind of helped us. But I saw throughout the world how, like, everybody was there on toes, right? Like, it felt like everybody was monitored 24 by 7, and anything that they could say could potentially work against them,
Yeah. And I was
right?
teaching at a college, and I mentioned this on a show with a buddy the other day. What really scared me, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, believe me, but I remember seeing the Milgram experiment, the gentleman that did the experiment at Yale trying to figure out, like, he's like, his operating premises, well, how did probably some professional, and probably prior to World War II or the Third Reich, were probably pretty decent people, go along with this. And if you've ever seen the Milgram experiment, it's the one where you're hitting people with voltage if they get the question wrong. Have you seen that before? Okay, well, here's basically the dynamics behind it. There's a guy that's an actor every time these two people enter the room, and he's always going to be the one. They're always lying basically to the other person who's the control subject or the subject of the experiment. So anyway, they bring him in, and they're like, okay, we're going to put this guy in another room, and you can hear into the other room. And they're said, here's what we're going to do. We're running this experiment. It's very important. The government's behind it. It's like all these authorities are behind it. The guys in lab coats. And then they said, every time somebody misses a question, hit them with a higher level of voltage.
Hmm.
And what was interesting is the people that were most likely to keep hitting the voltage. And the guy in the other room is an actor screaming, "Oh my gosh, you're killing me over here."
Mm-hmm.
And these people would look, 1961, I think it was, it's in black and white. You can watch it on YouTube. He kept looking at the guy saying, "Hit him again." He's like, "Hey, dude, the guy's yelling there." He goes, "Do what we say." And many would continue to do it, especially the more educated they were and the higher paying jobs. So like there was a guy in construction, like, "Screw this, I'm walking out," where a guy in a suit and tie was like, "Okay, you told me to do it." So I say that to say, when I was teaching at this college, I started to see a different side of the people I taught with. I always knew they kind of leaned left, and they were flower children from the 60s pretty much. Those were the people that I taught with, and they just kind of naturally leaned left. But we're in a meeting and this guy gleefully says, "Do you know there's a new app out where you can basically tell on your neighbor if your neighbor has COVID and is not following protocol?" And he was like, and I'm like, holy shit, like this guy he's gleeful in saying he wants to turn people in or like report people. And I'm like, damn, what the hell's happening to people? So when I saw that experiment, and it was a Jewish gentleman saying, how does the Holocaust happen? How does this happen in Germany? And how susceptible are people to this type of experimentation where if pushed by what appears to be authority figure, will they pull the trigger? And it was really sad to watch because these people are getting pulled off the street and they're willing to hit. And they say like, "Hey, when you get over 250, you're in kill them land." And they're pushing 280 and 300. And as long as that person would continue to say, but follow the experiment, you've agreed to this, pull the trigger. And they would just keep doing it. And, and you're like, wow. Yeah. And so for a guy to say like, "Hey, there's a great new app out where you can tell on your neighbor."
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with people?
I feel like the late stage of this capitalism is domestication of humans. And what I mean by that is, right, not even several, like maybe a century ago, right, people used to ride horses into war,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, sure.
And today, horses need weather controlled rooms and shiny jackets, and they cannot like run for more than an hour or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we def wildness out of horses slowly and surely, right? And now all we are looking at is, have you seen those horse auctions where they go for millions of dollars? They're like, they look at the structure and the bone structure and the pedigree of the horse, right? And they're like, yeah, this is a great horse. And I'm like, no, that's a great domesticated horse. That's not a wild horse. And if it was survival, that horse would probably the first horse to die, because there are like 20 people watching after that one horse, right? And now if you look at humans, and we are becoming the same, where we do not have a lot of autonomy in our lives now. We are slowly losing it, right?
Yeah.
And also it's like you don't have control over almost anything,
Yeah.
at least in terms of what you own or what you do. And you don't own a lot of stuff, right? It's like pay for life, keep paying, pay for everything, own nothing kind of mindset. But also it's like COVID really exposed the soft underbelly of the humanity. That was like, we are so domesticated that people were fighting each other for like toilet papers.
Well, yeah, that's one of those phenomenons in the United States that I've never quite understand. That everybody steals or not steals. They buy all the toilet paper and certain other products. But I am interested though in kind of like what we might be in agreement on this. I'm not quite sure, but like the way I've been educated in this field, capitalism itself is a Marxist term. It was coined by a Marxist to say the ism, the other ism type of thing. And I'll tell you straight up, if I have to put a label on kind of where I see things politically, I'm radically libertarian. I mean, I approach the anarchist libertarian view. I always think governments skew bad. Governments tend to work to their own interests and probably against the interests of people. But I think historically you would agree there hasn't been a lot of ownership or freedom. It's always been a 99 or 1% to the other 99. Generally, always it's been some level of that. There's always been many, many people not in particularly good situations economically or knowing where their next meal's coming from. And there's always been an elite. So the question is, or what are the elites doing? So I probably have a pie in the sky view, but my view of like the role of government would be to protect individual rights to your life and property. Ayn Rand, was an objectivist, and she defined it as the only legitimate role was to protect individual rights from force and fraud from others. So you have a court system, settle disputes, execute contracts, whatever. But in that type of environment, again, it's pie in the sky, I'm sure, to many. But in that environment, you and I could trade to mutual satisfaction. I make shoes and you make, and when you plant potatoes and I want a potato at the steakhouse and you want shoes to put on your little girl's feet, whatever. And we trade, whether it's a barter system, whether it's some type of coin or monetary system or whatever. But people that are productive, what wealth they will accumulate will be based upon their productivity to some degree. And then the government, yeah. So, all right, so where are you on that? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I would agree. And there are certain parts of history where 100% of everything was owned by a very small group of people. Literally yes. The 100%, right? And then came the new chapter of civilization where we were like, everybody should have equal independence, right? But the problem is, if you look at the base of that civilization, it came from Rome, Roman society, right? But even that society was built on slaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of people fail to recognize that. They're like, Romans were the greatest society. I'm like, no, there was an underlying, slave system that literally held that whole society together, right? And now we took inspiration from that and we said, okay, everybody is equal, right? Everybody has the same rights and the same duties towards society, right? And then we chose people who are government, right? Who became government. And the problem was those people, right? Those people started to tell us what to do and what not to do, right? Not in terms of how we should behave or, like how we should be as an ideal citizen, but rather like starting dictating lifestyle, right? And I feel like if you look at today's government, it's very clear government doesn't give a fuck up. Sorry to swear.
A lot of governments do whatever you want.
Okay, a lot of governments don't care about their people at all. Like they're least bothered about the common citizen, right?
Sure.
Rather they.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, like in the United States. In the United States, we got people making $175,000, $176,000 a year in the House of Representatives, and after 6 terms and 12 years, they're worth $57 million.
Oh, yes. Did you see the news where a congressman was trading stocks on the floor?
I don't doubt that.
Floor.
Yeah. I mean,
he was caught live.
Sure. So
right.
Yeah.
And somehow, American congressmen and women are the most successful and the most profitable traders in the world.
Sure.
Right.
There's a lot of numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, they beat a lot of good hedge funds. They beat a lot of elite traders when it comes to returns and when it comes to making money. Right?
And they're influenced to write the laws that affect the businesses and how the businesses are regulated. So imagine that. Yeah.
And if they wanted to be honest, they'd be like, okay, we will not trade, at least in our own sector. Right. So if for example, me and you, Jack, if we both were in energy in a council, right? How about we don't trade any of energy stocks? But they would not do that, that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
because if they did that,
mm-hmm.
then the term career politician would not exist.
True. Yeah. And so I probably have very much pie in the sky views of the way things quote unquote ought to be. I certainly think at the founding of our country, and again, I'm from Virginia, so Jefferson pretty much wrote the Declaration, Madison pretty much wrote the Constitution, and George Washington's the father of the country. So, I mean, it all pretty much happened right here in my backyard of where I grew up and where I was born. Jefferson did say, and there were those that were fighting against the language where he said all men are created equal. And then he said the function of government is protect the individual rights. And then the pursuit of happiness, it was all directly from John Locke, but it's kind of it's classical liberal theory of what the function of government is. And he goes on to say, if government fails to meet these needs, the protection of the rights, it's the duty of the people to alter alter or abolish it. So in the very founding document, he's saying there'll be further revolution if we don't get it right. It's okay. He says that. Have we lived up to it? Hell no. I get it, right? But when you
But do you
read
think it's coming? But do you think that change is coming?
do I think that day is coming?
Yeah, that change where people actually hold their governments responsible.
Well, no, I don't. I don't because I mean, there's a lot of crazy theories going out there, and we can go all over the place. And I guess that's what we do in podcasting. But I think that 99% of what we see is controlled chaos. It's chaos driven by certain forces to keep us fighting along dimensions of race or sexual oriented, whatever the hell it is. I mean, that keeps everything going. And to some degree, used to be, from the Roman days, like the bread and circuses, So that's an argument about, when I look back at the 80s and race relations seemed to be better and the entertainment seemed to be good and there was a mall on every corner and people were shopping and the economy was rebounding. America seemed to actually make things still then, before all the industry left. And so you look back at those days, but again, there's manipulation. I mean, certainly we were turned into a consumer population. Everything was about all the goodies you
Exactly.
could. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're essentially domesticated into behaving and just consuming what you're offered rather than actually manufacturing or making things up.
Right. And the argument now is with all the chaos, this is always the best way to bring in whatever power structure to say, hey, you have chaos. I'm the leader that fixes this and I'll bring you peace. And if you're beaten down enough by riots in the streets, you're ready for anything and you'll become a slave to whatever if you feel like you're going to be safer. I mean, I think that's the argument of how we're being. And that's another thing when I mentioned this, I kind of open with COVID, but there's stuff that goes on like in the news that I know is batshit crazy. It can't possibly be true. And they're just bald-faced lying to people right on the air. But it has led to this. Everybody's got a voice now. I mean, everybody, we can do what we're doing right now. This is great.
Hmm.
And you see the ratings of major cable news networks. Nobody's watching.
It's down. It's almost non-existent.
Yeah. And I think, if you've played the
Yeah, I remembered something, right? In the COVID times, right?
Mhm.
I saw this YouTube video where I guess it was Ronald Reagan or John F. Kennedy. I don't know who said it. They said, you're in trouble that day when government says, we are here to rescue you, right?
Actually, it was Reagan, and what Reagan said
Reagan,
is
right?
like the seven most dangerous words was I'm here from the government, I'm here to help, or something
Yes,
like that. However many
right,
words. Yeah,
right.
that was a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
line from Reagan. Yes, yes.
And then Kamala Harris used it.
I didn't know that. Kamala Harris quoted Ronald Reagan.
No, no, she said, like, I am here, like we are here to protect you from COVID.
Oh yeah, yes, yes. Well, I could see her saying that. Yeah, quoting Reagan would have been. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there was a lot of similarities to what Reagan said about taxation and what Kennedy said.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
Kennedy wanted to lower the marginal tax rates leading up to the time. I think they got it passed right before his death. And yeah, it's interesting what a person that's kind of an icon of the left in the US today, really where he was politically. I mean, Kennedy is an interesting character in that because I think people on both sides, people that lean more conservative and liberal, get from him
Mm.
whatever they want.
Yeah.
And then there's certainly, and this is one of those whole lines that was addressed in the movie, in the JFK, Oliver Stone's movie. It was the wanting to pull out of Vietnam. And there's evidence he might have had concerns about Vietnam. There's great evidence of that. But he had also pretty much been a Cold Warrior, as his brother Bobby was. I actually saw an historian the other day that was making the argument that the Bobby Kennedy 68 sort of using ending the American involvement in Vietnam was just the opening. It wasn't so much he believed in it. He was there in the early 60s with his brother supporting our involvement in Vietnam, although it was the armed advisors and it wasn't actual ground troops. But anyway, it may have been more of a play on just a political opportunity because the war was becoming so unpopular. Well,
Because even with the current government, right? When Elon stepped out, right, of that, like government, finding inefficiencies within the government, right? And he stepped out and he said, this mess is not fixable. That's essentially what he said.
Yeah.
because I think he realized somewhere along the way that deep state was indeed real.
Yeah. And somebody was telling me today, I haven't seen it because I haven't really studied it and looked into it, that apparently Musk and Donald Trump are making nice again. Maybe they're playing footsie again. They like each other or something. I don't know. But
That's just maybe because like Trump might have threatened him with a couple of NASA contracts,
sure,
maybe,
sure.
and some bandwidth with his internet.
Well, that was a criticism when Musk was named to that role, that, a lot of the people on the Democrat Party side were saying this could be a conflict. He is someone who has gained great wealth from government content. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'm not so sure you're wrong about that. Do I think that creating a board of examination of how much waste there is with all of these different government, was that a good thing? Sure. Is
Yeah,
he the right guy for it? I don't know. I mean,
I don't think so.
yeah,
Yeah,
I could see the criticism. I mean, but I don't know. Believe me, I don't want to sound like a complete coward in this, but I'm just not political. I'm really kind of an observer of what's happening. I have in my mind what the
but also,
government.
Jack,
Yeah,
do you think it's because you understand that your opinion doesn't matter anymore?
I don't think it ever did.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I've
Like,
always, again, I keep using the term like pie in the sky. I've always had an ideal in my mind that, well, and it comes to kind of the business model too. And I've seen some people, and this is interesting because it really kind of, it kind of really goes at sort of this perception that I think a lot of Americans have, because I think it's taught to them that the rich guy is always the bad guy. No, well, if you find people, this has been my experience, who are truly wealthy, they made it. They work their ass off. They drive a beat up car, and they, like, and there's a saying, certainly in America, that it's always the fourth generation that blows the money. Like, there may be a person that works really hard to build a business, construction, it could be anything like that, but he makes money. Then the son respects it because he saw daddy work hard, but then they spoil the next generation. And by the time you get to the fourth generation, they blow all the money because they don't have any respect for how it was made. But I can tell you, I've been around a lot of people who are
mhm.
quite wealthy, and I know for a fact they're wealthy, and you'd never know it. They work their ass off. So that kind of, now, are there people who are born into generational wealth that go to all the elite schools and then kind of walk into politics, or they're that somewhat connected? Sure. But I think a lot of your average sort of everyday people that are quite successful and wealthy from their own hard work does exist. Where I was going to go with this is, it's largely based upon the idea, like, I don't know, let's say I have a hamburger stand. If I'm going to do really well with the hamburger stand, what am I going to have to do? Get a lot of people to want to eat my hamburgers, right? So I have an incentive to make a good hamburger, or to do it in an efficient manner. I mean, that was the whole McDonald's thing, is they were rolling out 15-cent hamburgers in 1955, but they were doing it
Yep,
fast, and it was efficient,
facts.
and it was tasty enough, and it was uniform. I mean, growing up in America, that was the one thing. You could stop at any McDonald's anywhere, really in the world, but anywhere in the United States, you're going to get the same hamburger.
Hmm.
Pretty clean place generally. It was going to, I mean, fairly well, especially in the 60s and 70s. Those places were really immaculate, and all the people working behind the counter was like, it was uniform, and that was an entry level job for a lot of Americans growing up and working at McDonald's. So we had that view that it was fast food, good enough. I'm sure the quality's gone down tremendously through the decades, but it was one of those things that we frequented that restaurant because we got consistency, and it was kind of part of the American life. But if you had a small pizzeria somewhere, the reason you get business is maybe it's a quaint place, but it's going to be the quality of the food and the quality of the service. But people, man, you get into the restaurant business, that's 100-hour plus weeks. If you're the guy that it comes down on, I've had restaurant owner friends, 1 in 3, I think, make it. I mean, it's really a tough business. You get old quick. I mean, places get stale. It's kind of hard to keep it going. But anyway, what I'm saying is, if you're going to jump into that line of work, it's a lot of work involved. And I do think that the hard work thing is a lot of time poo-pooed. It's always like, if somebody has money, well, they stole it. They stole it from everyone else.
I think that was very apparent with the Starbucks CEO hearing. They were like, "You're a billionaire. Why can't you pay your people?" And he was like, "I made this money on my own. It was not generational. It was not handed down. and I built this empire, and I earned it, right? And I don't remember the congressman's name, but they were like speechless because they could not have any comeback to that logic. But he
Well, they
was
had
like,
no experience.
no,
They probably
yeah,
had no
but
experience working either.
yeah. So he's like, I know what it takes to be broke and to live with very much limited resources. But I made all this money on my own because I have been working for so many years, and they could not come back with any substance, right?
Yeah, well, and I remember doing a talk radio show with a friend of mine who's very libertarian like I am years ago, and they were talking about another minimum wage hike. And my friend was saying, and statistically, I mean, if you study Thomas Sowell, he talks a lot about this because that was really what changed him from being a Marxist to being a free enterprise guy. And I don't think he's a conservative in that sense. I don't even think he considers himself a libertarian, but he's someone that believes in the free market. So he said he was working as an intern in Washington, and he did a deep dive study into what did the minimum wage actually do. And it basically put entry level workers out of work because it priced them out. So the friend of mine was on the radio one day, and a guy called in, and my friend, he's been on radio for 45 years. He's a Vietnam veteran, probably longer than that, probably 55 years. But the guy calls in and said, why is it the fat cat like owner of a hamburger shop or a pizzeria? Why does he get to be rich and drive 3 cars while those people are making nothing? Well, I've known those people that run those pizzerias. They're not driving 3, Mercedes or something. That's not really the lifestyle. So anyway, my friend says, okay, buddy, let's say that at that time, let's just use a round number, that the minimum wage was $5 and they bumped it to $5.50. That's a 10% increase in wages, right? And he goes, what determines the cost of the pizza? And the guy goes, well, it depends on whether you want to gouge the consumer. He goes, no, dumbass. You're out there competing against other people. If you're making a $20 pie and somebody else is making a $10 pie, your $20 pie better reflect that greater quality or you'll never sell a pizza. So it's going to be the cost of the ingredients going in. It's going to be the popularity of the taste, the texture, however you make it, how well your service is conducted, etc. That determines whether you sell the pizza. So if the government comes around and arbitrarily raises the cost of your labor, then you're going to have to do something about the price of the pizza. And the guy's response again is, well, it depends on whether you want to gouge the consumer, not buy your daughter another car, the owner of the pizza shop. This is somebody that I would guarantee, not to disparage the guy calling in, but he's probably never owned a business. He's probably never had to make a payroll. He's probably never had to pay business taxes and deal with government, the government agencies that come in and inspect this and check that and all the red tape that goes into running a business. This guy, he just says, I want it to magically be. And I remember Rush Limbaugh years ago, and I always thought it was a great line. A guy called in one time, and he says, hey, I don't know why they just don't increase. And then this is 30 years ago. Why don't they just increase the minimum wage to $15? And Rush was like, why not 50? And the guy goes, yeah, that might even be better. He goes, why not 100? He goes, well, I think that's a little bit too much. He goes, based on what? And the guy goes, well, 100's kind of extravagant. He goes,
yeah, it's just great.
Well, no, but but also what people don't take into account is if you raise wages artificially, the cost of everything is going up with it. I mean, it's going to go up with it. You're not going to be paying people at a fast food restaurant $47 an hour without having to sell a $27 hamburger. I mean, it's the math.
Well, I guess at least in the food industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, I don't know. Recently, I saw some minister of US talk about this. He said, India exports a lot of stuff to US, but they don't buy even one bushel of corn from us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, maybe because India is literally the food basket of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe, and I understand that. And what I feel, at least with food is an industry where a lot of greed kind of fucks up the prices, right? Because the consumer is paying so much money, and the farmer isn't getting shit, right?
No,
I don't.
No, look, I would never say. I'm spitballing, but I'm saying if I'm going to be Jackie's hamburger stand and grill or whatever, and you're across town and you're flipping burgers and making them for $2 less than I am, then I go out of business, I think, unless my burger is $2 better than yours. And what I pay the employees is, let me tell you something else too. And I don't know, they may have been lying to me. They may have been indoctrinating me, but I was 16 years old when I worked for I was working for a major grocery store, and we had a chart on the wall. We had a chart on the wall to make us understand. I had the manager. I was 16 years old, my first job when I was in high school. I'd had another job. It was the first job of paying that kind of money. But I had a manager say, we had bags back then that cost a penny to the store, 2 and 5. So they were different size paper bags. And he goes, when you put an item in a larger bag than you should, you just cost the store. I mean, he would talk to us like that. You're costing the store, and then all our profits,
Yeah, that's bullshit.
But then again, if he's the manager of the store and he's trying to maximize profit and keep our people employed and keep the business, if a person grabs the largest bag we had, which again was like a 5-cent bag, and throws like one item in it and then goes, here you go, customer, you go. You just made a 4-cent mistake out of laziness or whatever. And that was his point, was make sure that the items that you have, items, is put in the proper size bag so that you're not using a larger bag. Okay, but here's what he showed us. There was a chart on the wall, and it showed $1 in a circular pie chart. And it said, and I'll ask you, what percent of the dollar taken in at the cash register do you think went back into the cost of the goods sold on the counters?
Probably 20 cents, 20 to 30 cents.
75 cents. So to put the item on the counter, it took 75 cents out of that dollar to put it back. And believe me, supermarkets are highly competitive because the guy down the street's trying to get...
but if you look at, for example, right, if you look at Walmart's strategy of acquiring goods, right, they are so aggressive and their profit margins are pretty good.
Sure. And they put a lot of mom and pop. I get it. They put a lot of, and I get the whole argument. They put a lot of mom and pops out of operation. I get it.
See, Walmart, if I remember correctly, right, earned around $19.44 billion last year. Net profit.
They're huge.
Gross.
They're huge.
Yeah, so I would say, there is a good amount of margin that they enjoy, right?
Well, all right, again, this was 1978. I'm just saying that the chart that they were putting up is 75 cents, and then they talked about leasing the building, wages, and the rest. In the end, out of every dollar that came through the cash register, 1 cent was profit. And when they broke it down, you saw the cost of all the, the trucking the items, the travel, the expenses, the labor costs, etc. So all of that was going into that dollar. And, and I thought that kind of makes sense. Now, that means if they were paying 75 cents for it, people say it different ways. You could say it's a 25% markup. You could say it's a third markup. It's a third of the 75 cents. So that's still a pretty good markup. But that markup is and one of the managers at the store one time told me, he goes, what we try to do is drive competitors out of business by having better prices. He was saying our prices we try because we can do so much more volume than the local grocer. The local grocer has to make a greater profit. He has to, because he doesn't have the volume that this grocery store did. So with this greater volume of sales, they can try to run the prices down. And then again, the regulators will come in and say it's predatory pricing and it's try to monopolize and stuff like that. And again, people have different theories on all of that, those type of things. I'm certainly for people having the greatest amount of choice, and you'd like to think you live in a world where they get the most value for their dollar. But and again, in a free market, we would hope that to be. And I think that there are a lot of libertarian type of economists, the Milton Friedmans and people, and Thomas Sowell, that would say the more regulation, the more the government gets involved in regulating, the more the costs go up. And the more people that probably really would like to make, a better paperclip or whatever it is item they want to make, to kind of get driven out of business because it's too much regulation.
Yep, I agree. There is a town. I don't know. I have a terrible memory. There is a town which is split between US and Canada. It's Saint something. I forgot. And there was this vlogger who went into that town, right? And he was talking to the US head of people, and he was like, what is the industry of this town, right? What runs this town? They're like, nothing. And he asked, what does the Canadian side of the town runs on, and they're like, they have a steel mill, and we cannot have a steel mill because we have more stricter EPA laws.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. So I think you're right when you say regulation brings in more rigid structure, which leads to sometimes, lot of big industries collapsing, right? Because if you look at the Central America, and if you look at the coal industry itself, right, and if you look at the state of it, then you go, maybe, it's okay to be relaxed a little bit, because it's literally affecting like millions of people. And I'm not an American by any means, and my opinion sums up to absolutely zero in terms of value, right? Because it's not like my opinion can change anything. But what I feel is, if literally states of a country are hurting, right, from shutdown of one particular industry, and I see all these politicians talk about repurposing coal labor into something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might have heard the same thing, right? That the both parties push. They say, if we will repurpose this labor into something else, and I think it's not really possible, right? Because US is not in the position to say, okay, let's manufacture more cars, because anyway we have handed all of our jobs to China, and you know even to India to a certain extent. And I think Trump, I although he is a very weird personality, right? From an outsider perspective, Trump is a very weird personality to be leading a nation, right? And he made sense when he said that we are going to tax Apple more because they manufacture their products in China and India,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it makes sense on paper when he says, like, you better manufacturing it in US. But I think somewhere even he knows that it's not, I would say, a possible argument, right?
Yeah, but I think that, okay, in campaigning 2016, 2020, 2024, and then winning re-election, but I definitely think it in 2016, because I live in the U.S. and I've seen it. You can ride through parts of Virginia where I am, and especially North Carolina. North Carolina was the heart of the textile industry. It's where, Burlington Mills, Burlington, North Carolina, it's where they made clothing. And
Mhm.
they're big into manufacturing. High Point, North Carolina, big into furniture. I've heard the argument by 1955, Detroit was like the richest city in the world because it was cranking out. All right, Japan's devastated by the war. All of Europe's devastated by the war, and Detroit's cranking out more cars than anyone in the world, right?
Yep.
And now you go to Detroit, and it's 1/3 the
Yeah.
population, and the place is like it was blown out in a war, like it's
Yep.
completely destroyed. So America lost its whole industry base. However, all the people you can potentially blame or whatever happened, we went from, and I'll tell you this too. I drive an Acura. Before that, I drove an Acura. Before that, I drove an Acura. And before that, I drove Hondas. I grew up in a household that was Ford Mercury, pretty much. Had a Chrysler one time. But, we bought American cars. And then I got a Japanese car. And I'm like, this is a hell of a lot better. And I just kept driving. And I think Acura is sort of like an American division of Honda, but whatever. But yeah, I've liked those cars. And I remember this. I do remember this. I remember the first Japanese stereo equipment I was ever around. And it was like, and that was, and that was kind of the joke in the US, made in China, made in Japan kind of thing. Then I started getting Sony equipment and JVC. And I went, man, like,
Yeah.
and then I wouldn't have had anything but Japanese. But back in the 70s, it was Pioneer. It was Alpine
Hmm.
in the car. It was all of these American industries. And then America seemed to make crap or nothing at all. And so you saw a change in the view of foreign products coming to the US. Well, that means, though, American workers aren't making those things anymore.
Yeah. I think, okay, let me give you the Indian example of it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we went through literally the same cycle. India used to manufacture shit ton of things, and somewhere around the way we lost it to China. We gave it away, just like Americans.
Right, right.
But then the Prime Minister came in and he said, let's launch a campaign called as Make in India, right? So we will incentivize the local production, right? We'll give you the tax rebates and everything. But then the industry came together and they said, this is not enough. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to work if you just give us rebates, because China is selling these at ridiculous prices that we can never compete,
Right. Right.
even in a million years. And then the government was like, okay, then let's sanction them, like at least raise the custom duty,
Mm-hmm.
right? To a place where even China has to sell to a similar cost if the goods was produced in India,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then all this opposition government was like, like, oh my God, it's going to raise the cost of goods and blah 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 blah, right? And yes, that did happen for 2 years in India. Lot of electronic, lot of vehicles, everything got very expensive because all of a sudden there was this bottleneck of custom duties, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
was on China, and we were very reliant on China.
Right.
And yeah, the country did suffer for 3 4 years, but then guess what? Like people started to manufacture stuff and actually do a lot of effort and creativity to cater to the demand. And now we are at a stage where India does manufacture a lot of stuff
Mm-hmm.
again,
Right.
right? And it's like it's one of those steps towards self-dependence
Mm-hmm.
instead of relying on another country to buy stuff, right? For example, even we used to buy our defense weapons from Russia and US, right? And then we saw this crazy haired man come in and start threatening India, right? And then India was like, okay, then we should manufacture our own defense weapons. Like I feel like that's what US needs to do, of course, because if we just let it go, right, then America's dependency on developing countries is going to be very much more, like so much that it's going to be unbelievable, right? Because if you look at it right now, the most rich race in US, like the highest earning race in US is Indians, like
Mm-hmm.
Indians, like
Yeah.
actual people from India, right?
Right.
Because their dual median income is somewhere around 134,000, and then the next race is white, which is around 74,000 and annual, and that's dual income,
I
not
think
single income, right?
I'm not sure which particular nationality and or ethnic group. I'm not so sure there's not some Asian cultures as well that wouldn't be in between Indians and
Yeah.
whites.
So yeah, so
I
exactly.
think
So
whites
now
are like third or fourth on the list now.
yep.
Yeah.
And then you look at this whole the H-1B visa drama, and
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like as an if I was an American, I would say yeah, very good, right? But I would also be scared for at least next 3 4 years, because then you're going to all of a sudden have this lack of resource, that's human labor,
Yeah.
right? And human labor is very critical to get this US, the being the big brother and leading in technology and having a Silicon Valley is very important,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
I think US needs a strong leadership which says we are going to go through rough time at least 1 or 2 terms, and we will prosper, but we will have to go through this period. But I feel like no party has that strong of backbone.
Well, all right. I think the appeal of Trump, and again, this is a very, it's almost like the guy in
Dude,
the guy.
sorry, Jack, let,
Yeah.
let me tell you,
Yeah.
Indians love Trump. Like you do not realize the Trump would win an election in India. I
Okay.
can tell you
Okay.
that much.
Well,
Like
I
they
just want to make
love him so much.
I want to make a kind of a simple armchair quarterback type of analysis. I
Mhm.
think that what I heard him saying in the message for 10 years was, your leaders have screwed you. Like he's saying to you, the American citizen, you don't have a job anymore. You don't have industry. It's all overseas because they run high tariffs on us. We have nothing on them. And I think to large part, he'd say some of these rich elites that, serve in Congress, House and Senate and all the rest, they're in bed with some of these foreign countries they've sold
Definitely.
influence. So he's basically saying, I think this was his whole appeal. Now, whether or not he'll pull it off, I don't know. Will there be
Yeah.
pain?
Even I don't think so.
Well, I know, right. But I'm saying, I think that what Americans were hearing was, for the first time, a leader was saying, because I mentioned, I've driven through these towns in Virginia, in the coal mining regions, and in the areas where there used to be textile industry and other industries. It's
So
nothing.
you have seen the devastation,
It's
right?
nothing but drugged out kids. I'm serious. And I don't want to be offensive to people in certain, but it's a bunch of kids that have high incidence of drug use and death from drugs and things like that because they have no prospects. I mean, it's some
Yeah.
really, really depressing
They
areas.
had no opportunity. Yeah.
Yes. And because what used to be there was kind of the family opportunity to work at the mill or whatever, it's gone. So if it's gone and it doesn't really scream of any other natural resources, it's not a tourist area. It's not like it's really off the beaten path. So there's all these places in the country where there's really depressed areas. So I think, again, Trump's message of, I want to bring the industry back. I want you to have a job at the factory. And I remember that that comment that in the 2016 election that Obama made, like, what's he talking about? We'll never get the job. It's almost like we'll never get the jobs back. It was this like real negative view of that. And I think that spurred Trump on and winning too. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't look at leaders as being saviors, but I can definitely listen to a message and say, I can certainly understand why people heard that message and said, he's speaking to me. I do feel that the whole system has let me down because I'm living in this depressed town with lots of drugs and no opportunity. So, all right, let me ask you. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you have heard about the recent H-1B visa thing, right, where they raised it to $100,000, I think that's Trump levying like tariffs on human labor for the first time in the history of history, right? Because let me tell you, Jack, for every, I don't know the exact statistic, but for every H-1B slot open, I think there are 600 or 700 applicants. Like the skill and the kind of, it's like the top of the top of the top, right? That make it to H-1B. Right. And now by Trump levying this tariff on that, saying, we will train our scientists in US. And I'm like, guess what? The whole NASA was built on Operation Paperclip. So, let's get real, right? Like I think Americans have forgotten where Sir Von Braun came from, right? He did not come from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, right?
Right.
Certainly not.
Right.
And then if you look at, okay, there is this statistic that says that in NASA, more Indians work in NASA than more Indians work in ISRO. ISRO is our own space organization, just like NASA. We say that more Indians work in NASA than in ISRO. Like, like that's the scale, right? And now you're levying this, tariff on labor, saying H-1B has to be $100,000. That means if the employer has to even pay the person higher, right? Because you have spent this $100,000 on just like the application, then you got to make sure that, okay, now if the employee doesn't need to run anywhere, right? Either I bound him with law, right? Like I say, you cannot quit for 10 years, which is kind of illegal.
Right.
Or I had to pay him so much money that he doesn't have any other option left.
Mm-hmm.
So either you price him out or you just legally bind him, right? So that means somehow you kind of appreciated the labor cost that was cheaper before.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me ask you this, because again, we were going to, when you, on your show, and again, I took it other directions. It's on me, but I was curious about what, in your side of the world, on the Kennedy assassination and other things about U.S. history, what was the impact of like the movie JFK and things like that? Does India, and I mean, I know you can't speak for everyone, but do you believe that in your world, people look at that as clearly the government was behind that, or clearly Oswald couldn't be the shooter, or is it even really discussed? I mean, is it one of those things where it's looked at like those poor Americans, they don't know that their leader was taken out and it was clearly a conspiracy, or is there much view of it at all?
Yeah. So it's like US is a whim, like if US was a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
If United States was a man, right? And that man did not know that everybody was watching that person throughout, right? It's like there is this quote in our language that says, when a cat starts to drink milk, it closes its eyes and it pretends the world does not exist and nobody's looking at me. And I guess with JFK, that's what happened. Like you people forgot the world existed. And the perspective of India is, even one of our prime ministers was shot down by
Mm-hmm.
their own bodyguard,
Mm-hmm.
like by the person who was appointed to protect them, right? So we have seen a situation where a prominent person who was kind of going against the regime was kind of penalized by death, right?
And clearly an
And
inside job.
yeah, and it's clearly a planned inside job.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way that that would have done, right? And even with JFK, if you look at it, and even with this all the conspiracy theories that float around, and I always lean into conspiracy theories because I kind of feel that that's the truth, maybe, because no person would kind of put their career and life at threat to tell a lie, right? And even if you look at the 9/11, or even if you look at the UFO conspiracies, right? The Bob Lazar kind of people, right? They literally put their entire life on the line to tell you the truth,
Yeah, I've definitely gotten to the point that I believe nothing. I mean, everything that
right?
comes out. Well, that's another thing I was wanting to ask you. Given all the political assassinations and even what's happened here in the United States in the last 2 weeks,
Yeah, even Charlie Kirk. Yeah.
so do people in India? And again, you can't speak for everyone, but is the view
Mhm.
like Americans are crazy violent?
The view about America is because like a lot of elite labor, right? Like skilled people from India go to US, and all the time all that they're thinking is, how does this affect me? I know it's a very selfish view. That's what most Indians think, like, how does this affect my visa application, or
Right,
my opportunities overseas?
right.
And but the general view about Americans is, Americans are very educated, like they're very very upfront, honest people. And if you talk to any Indian, they would have a very good feedback about Americans,
Well,
right?
I believe you there, but I would think, but again, it's that kind of thing like growing up. I told one of my graduate, when I was in graduate school for history, I get in history, a master's in history. I told one of my thesis advisors, very matter of factly, I'm like, yeah, when I was 13, about the time we were pulling out of Vietnam, I was wondering what war I'd be drafted into. And she looks at me and she was like, really? And I'm like, why wouldn't I? I had a grandfather in World War One. My father was drafted during Korea. His sixth great uncles were in World War II. My mom's sixth great uncles were in World War II. I mean, it was like a family business. Everybody in America had that same history. Again, we were a lot of involvement in foreign based wars and things like that. But I'm also looking at it like, I don't know. I don't watch the news enough. I mean, I've certainly seen some events worldwide, but I would think, as much as America probably is in sort of the media landscape throughout the world, I would think we were probably perceived as a very violent people. Because back to my childhood, Bobby Kennedy getting killed, Martin Luther King
So
getting.
yeah, if you talk to any Asian, right, apart from Vietnamese, because that's a different story. If you talk to any Asian, they would say, yeah, US is always the aggressor, right? Like they will have this random aggressive acts,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a perception on the government, not on the people.
Okay.
Like, I think there is a very clear distinction, because you have to understand that a lot of Asia was fucked by Britishers for like centuries. Like
Right.
even
Sure.
India was ruled nearly two centuries.
Yes.
So we kind of have this understanding that the government is different than people,
Sure. Always. Yeah.
and we are very fresh, right? Like we're just 77 years old in an independent country, and it's like we have an issue with authority. We always have,
Interesting. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because authority fucked us for 200 years, so we're like, maybe we're done with being told what to do, right? And that's kind of the view that Indians have about Americans, I feel like, because Indians have this very clear vision of the government is different than people,
Right.
right? And
Right.
the government can be crazy and be the aggressor, right? But every Indian knows that like Americans are good people, educated people. That's what they look at it as, right? And you have to understand that, okay, here is something that Americans do not understand. Let me tell you this, right? the biggest propaganda machine of United States is the Hollywood. Like there is no bigger propaganda machine than Hollywood.
Yeah.
And literally the whole world views and understands the fine grains of United States through movies. So I get it when people are very critical about Barbie or something. Because I'm like, of course, because I grew up watching English movies, right? And that kind of influenced the way I speak, or the way I think about United States or any Western country, right? And you have to understand that's what a lot of Indians or even Chinese or Japanese think about US.
Mm-hmm.
They do think from this movie, or you know like that perspective, where they say, okay, this is what US is.
Yeah. Well, I think that also had a lot to do with how America saw America. I mean, when you grow up in America, and a lot of John Wayne movies, and or the cavalry coming in to save the day, and all those kind of imagery of good guys, bad.
I remember I had this online kind of debate with somebody who said that Drake was bigger than Michael Jackson. And I was like, do you even know who Michael Jackson is? I don't think there is a music personality bigger than Michael Jackson.
Well, that brings up a point. And again, I know that you're much younger than I am, but I was teaching in a college 10 years ago. I guess it was about 8 years ago, I guess, is when Prince died. And I came into the class and I said, the entertainer and the musical magic of Prince, he just passed away. And they're like, who's that? And I'm like, wow, and so I made
Yeah, but here is something about Michael Jackson, right?
No. Here's where I'm going though. This is where I'm going. Prince had just happened to die, so they don't
Yeah.
know Prince. And I made a reference one time to Luther Vandross. They didn't know Luther Vandross either, which I kind of got. And I told them, I said, no, you were probably conceived to Luther Vandross. Talk to your parents about it, because they were probably listening to Luther. So anyway, but yeah, I made the point, said, because we're so fractured and you're on so many different modes of media or whatever you're on, you really don't know what big is. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, my mother would not have necessarily approved so much of Madonna or thought her to be worthwhile to watch, but she knew who she was. And I said, we all knew Michael Jackson because he was international.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson
Exactly.
was the biggest it got.
Yeah.
There was kind of a little bit of in America.
And also it's like when it comes to Michael Jackson, right? Like a person who doesn't understand English identifies Michael Jackson.
Yeah. I
Right?
remember he was really big in Japan. I remember. Was he big in India
is
too?
So huge in Asia, throughout Asia,
Yeah.
even in Africa. He is like, he's seen as one of those people whom people dream to become. Like he's like the Michael Schumacher of Formula One. Like you don't necessarily understand the Formula One, but you understand that this person is a great person, right?
Yeah,
And I feel like that's the kind of impact that Michael Jackson had without social media.
No, now that you mention it, that's a really good point. I don't know. I mean, again, the whole British connection to America with the Beatles. Beatles were huge.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was much.
Dude, let me tell you this, right?
Yeah.
The amount of people broke their toes doing the toe stand that Michael Jackson did is insane. I can tell you that. Like even today, there are like copies of Michael Jackson in India,
Mm-hmm.
and that's so popular because it feels like he was one of those people who anybody, literally any part of the world, could connect to instantly.
No, I believe. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and that's what I'm saying. I don't think anyone making the statement that Drake was bigger than Michael Jackson. I mean, yeah, but again, and this is another thing, and again, it shows how far back I go. The next thing I told those children or those young people in the classroom, I said, when I was growing up, there was CBS, NBC, and ABC, and maybe a UHF channel, the local UHF channel. So we all watched the same TV. So, I said, basically, Elvis Presley came on Ed Sullivan's show to make his debut. The Beatles came on. I said, if you were a comedian, you went on Johnny Carson. We all watched Johnny Carson late at night. So we watched the same thing. So on Monday morning at the water cooler at work, we were talking about the same thing because we watched.
Same thing.
Right. And I don't think that's, it's funny. I coach college baseball and I'm out there with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And I I really don't know what influences them. And they know no history. Like we're baseball. And I will mention guys that played 20 years ago and they've never heard of them. They have no idea who I'm talking about. 20 years ago. I mean, guys in the Hall of Fame, and they're not aware of them. And I can be honest, when I was 20 years old and playing baseball in college, so I'm playing baseball in college in the 80s. I was very well aware of the players in the fees who were Hall of Famers that were playing before I was born. And these kids don't know anything about any history, which, I mean, I kind of get, because it's almost like too much information. Like my information sources when I was watching baseball as a kid growing up was there was a game of the week on NBC. So we all watched that game and we learned some history. So I don't think they're watching any kind of game anymore. They're on TikTok seeing the latest obscene thing a player did by bat flipping or doing something, to show up the opposition. I mean, they're watching that, but they don't have, and I'm not knocking them. I love these kids. They're really great kids. But yeah, I think it must be really tough to be young now, though, because there's so much being thrown at them.
Yeah. But Jack, let me ask you this. Do you think this is the same thing that every older generation did to the newer generation?
Say again? Do I think it's what?
Like, do you think this is the same thing that every older generation
got you.
to the younger generation?
I don't know, because I don't want
Let me
to
give you a perspective, right? Like, my perspective. He was like a 60, 70-year-old guy who said, when I was young, cars were really new. And our parents said, look at these poor kids, they have all these distractions like motor vehicle now. And that was a great thing. Like, it was seen as, like, that's the big distraction of this generation was, the motor industry.
Yeah. Well, I have been told, and I think it's probably true, that we're just human. When we're young. And I will say this, though. I think there's a lot of truth to this. I was listening to Jordan Peterson get asked a question. Jordan Peterson was speaking somewhere, and this woman said, you've made a lot of comments about the phenomenon in America of the helicopter parent, the one that's hovering over everything their kid does. And always in the middle of their business. They won't let them speak for themselves, all that. When they go to sign up for the college courses, they show up on campus, that kind of thing. I've actually had that happen when I was professor. She goes, what's that all about? And when I mentioned my parents, they lived to be 92 and 91. And grandmother, my mother's mother, was one of 13. On my father's side, his mother was one of 9. I think my grandfather was one of 8. That was common. My grandparents were born 1904 to 1906 in that time frame. So here's what Jordan Peterson said. I thought it was quite interesting. He said, at the turn of the 20th century, a parent did not get very close to their kids. Too many of them. And they were basically farmhands. If you lived on a farm, and most people did, there's just more kids to put in the field of work. And I know from my experience with my grandmother, she pretty much raised or reared the younger siblings. So the mother would put in charge the oldest daughters, and then the oldest sons would pretty much be the ones out there handling the fields and doing whatever with the younger siblings, etc. So he said they didn't get as close, and they also probably didn't take as much emotional stock in them because so many of them died before they were 3. There's so much infant mortality. Right.
Infant mortality.
Right. So he makes that point, and he goes, now you fast forward to really the sexual revolution of the 1960s, birth control, and then on-demand abortion pretty much following a decade later. So now the child has truly become a choice, and he goes, so what happens is when the parent has the boy and the girl, that's the kind of 2-parent thing. The 2 children thing with the parent, they're putting all their stock in their kid has to be perfect. So if they put them in baseball, like when I coach baseball, the parents are not always, but a number of them are insane in their expectations of their kids. I've talked to major leaguers from bygone eras, and they had parents that were kind of indifferent to even going to their games. And I had some that said their parents were very supportive. Had many friends that played at high levels of baseball said their parents didn't even really know what they were doing. And some of them might have been immigrants to the country, and they're like, the kid's playing professional baseball, and they're like, I don't even know what that is because they didn't grow up with it, whatever. But But what they didn't do was interject themselves into everything that happened. So when he made that point, he goes, these parents have all this stock in the outcome to the point that they're pushing the kids over the edge. And I've seen it. The kids are on needles, pins and needles, because they got this parent that can't have a bad outcome. And his point was, if you're only going to have 2 or 1, and you're selectively breeding basically a limited number of kids, you're going to really get really bent out of shape about the outcome. And I thought, wow, this is a really interesting point. Whereas again, that early 20th century parents like, hey, I have 14 of them, knock yourself out, figure it out on your own, which I think was probably a better model for the kids to be one of 4.
Because I think it's less of pressure.
Yes. And I think also, but I
remembered this, right? Sorry. It was Trevor Noah, I guess, who said, he informed his mother he had this late night show, right? And he was the host of the late night show. And all, the concern that his mother had was, okay, but do you have a desk? Do you have a desk and chair? Because that's like the office job. Like, that's all she was worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think that kind of gives you the kind of freedom to take risks and, as you said, figure out on your own.
Well, I don't think he'll mind me saying this too. I hope not. But I got a buddy of mine that pitched. I'll put it this way. He's up in age and he had a really successful career in the major leagues. He pitched in the major leagues for a number of years. And he told me the story when he got drafted into professional baseball. They sent him all the way across the country from the small town where he grew up all the way across the country. And he said, I'll be honest with you, 2 weeks in, I got really homesick. So he called 1967. I mean, this is 1967. He calls that mother and he goes, Mom, I'm getting kind of homesick and I don't know, maybe this is not right for me. And she goes, 3 things. 1, I don't have a room in the house for you anymore. 2, what was it? It was something 2. And then 3 was grow the hell up, and hung up the phone. So I asked this friend of mine, I said, how did you feel at 17? He hadn't even turned 18. Like, how did you feel when Mom hung up the phone? He goes, I felt relieved because she burnt the bridge behind me. Like there was no turning back. Now I was like, okay. So I adjusted. And then he went on to, marry this lovely woman that's had children with, his wife for all these years. All of this because he didn't go home. If he'd quit then, none of this would have ever happened, right? But it's interesting. The mother was like, I thought I raised a man, grow the hell up, and hung up the phone. And I'm telling you, the mothers I've dealt with in the last few years, not all of them, a lot of them would be on the plane. The moment the kid hung up the phone, they'd be jumping a plane to go get him. And this mother from 1967 said to her 17-year-old son, grow the hell up. Grow up and do what you're supposed to do. She goes, I don't have a room in the house for you anymore. So you got to grow up. And that's just not that common anymore. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's more common than I know, but that's what I'm talking about when we talk about the differences. And the other thing that I find very offensive, and I'll tell you this one real quick. I had a kid the other year that I dearly love. He's in his 30s now, and we still coach together now, but he was one of my players. Really, really sharp kid, never found his way to class kind of guy. So one day I went to him, and it was kind of a phenomenon within the coaching thing as far as the college. Every 5 minutes, they were stressing that the kids go to the classes, basically, So we're getting called on the carpet. If the kid fails to go to class, we got a dean saying, why isn't Timmy going to class, et cetera. So I caught this guy one day, very bright, but never would go to class. I was always having to suspend him or stay in his ass about it. So one day I said, when I was a freshman like you, our head coach wrote on the board, you're going to need a 2.0 GPA with 12 hours pass. And then he took the chalk like this off his hands. He goes, you don't make that, you don't play in the spring. I said, how often do you think he brought up go to class from that point on? He goes, probably every day. I said, never, not ever, not the rest of the year. And I was one of 32 guys to make the team. It was 85 guys in the room. 32 of us made the team. I don't remember one guy ineligible in the spring. So I said, fast forward. You got parents, or there are parents of players like you that call me and ask me why your ass doesn't go to class. They don't come down on you. They spent money for you to go to school. And I said, and I can tell you this. My father, the picture up here that ran for sheriff, the picture on the wall here. If my coach had actively come by and had nailed my door shut. I lived on the 8th floor of the dorm I was in. My freshman year, if the coach had come by and actively put boards over my door to try to nail me shut in, my dad would have said, "Why didn't you rappel out of the window down a rope into class?" And that's that. And I'm not bullshit. That's that. And I told the kid, I said, I can't imagine a world where my father would have blamed the coach that I didn't go to class. What the hell is going on that your parents think I'm the failure? Your dumb ass doesn't get up at 8 a.m. and go to English class.
Yeah.
But that's a part of the problem too. Every time the kid fails, they call the parent, why is my kid failing? Hell, I don't know. You raised him. Or he was reared in your home. How the hell do I know why he's a deadbeat and doesn't do what he's supposed to do? But that's how they think. They're always looking to blame failure on anybody but their kid. And that's a real phenomenon. And I'm telling you, when I say that my day, that was true. There's no way my father in any way would have blamed the coach for my failure to go to class. And to me, that's like so crazy. It's so crazy to me that
I have had that.
Really?
Like when I got like, I would say 2 or 3 marks less, like in grade, and I would tell my parents, I think the teacher did a mistake, and they're like, no, it's your stupid ass who couldn't write properly.
Well, I would think in Indian culture, you probably get a lot more how my dad was than the American parent of today.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, the pressure on Indian kids is like incredible. I'm telling you, incredible.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because an average kid learns about 3 to 4 languages within like first 2 or 3 years of his life, right? And then it's like, what do you want to become? And it's that early, trust me.
Yeah.
It's that early. Like, what do you want to become? What do you want to become? What do you want to become? And they have this set list of what you want to become, right? So it's like, we have this A B C D E F, 6 plans of what you need to become. And anything you say that's out of that list is kind of invalid.
Right.
It's like that show, Guess the Price, where you're like, guess the price. Is it 10 cents? Wrong. It's pudding. It's like that. It's like, what do you want to become? What do you want to become? And when I was a kid, I used to hate it. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Right?
Huh?
But then I realized one day that, like, what Indian parents talk about is go get a degree, get some educational background, so that if your dream or if your passion fails, you don't end up broke. Like, you got some job that you can go to instead of saying, oh, I'm just a failed artist. You can say, I'm a failed artist but also an engineer.
Yeah, that's an
Like,
interesting.
it's like a backup plan.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing though when parents get, like, I dated a girl years ago and she was an honors graduate from a major university in the state I'm in, and she graduated with a business degree. And then she went into art and photography, and she was a phenomenal photographer. But she told me once, she goes, I really wanted to go to this art school. And my dad said, be practical, make money. So go get a
Yep.
business degree. So she spends the 4 years to get the business degree and makes straight A's. I mean, she's like a 4.0 student because she's that driven and disciplined, but all the time she was an artist. She went into acting and some other things too, the other aspects of the arts. And I don't know, maybe if she'd gone and gotten a degree in the arts, it wouldn't have helped
Yeah.
her anymore, who knows? But
Yep.
it was interesting because I think that was what I heard a lot. That I started off in business like a semester, and I'm like, I love history. Why the hell am I getting a business degree? So I got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then I went to law school. And law school's law school, so it's not. You take what classes you want, other than the ones that are required, but then you take the bar, and you know what's going to be on the bar. But my advice has always been to kids. But again, I understand the cultural pressures and things like that to get gainfully employed and things like that. But
Yeah.
I would definitely I tell kids all the time, I would go with what you want to do until you have to do what you have to do, kind of thing. But again, I'm not paying for it. I'm not. Now, do I think Americans often get very worthless degrees? Absolutely. There's no doubt.
The other day somebody was studying social justice and workplace. I'm like, yeah. You're not going to earn anything.
Well, the one that catches a lot of heat in America in the cultural wars is like, the gender studies degree. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, but I
yeah.
mean, I don't know. Well, those jobs might be. Let me ask you something else too, because I thought about this. Are you familiar with the movie $1 Million Arm?
The Indian experiment, is it?
Yes.
Yes, yes, I saw it. Yes,
All right. Well,
yes.
the guy that's depicted in the movie by the actor Bill Paxton, that was the coach at
Hmm.
USC, Tom House, that's one of my
Yeah,
best friends. Yeah. So I remember when that was going on. It was Dinesh Patel, and the other guy was Renku. What was Renku? Yeah, Singh.
yeah.
Renku Singh. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, so when that was going on, I was back and forth to Southern Cal with the guy depicted in the movie that was a pitching coach, and he told me what was going on. And he was like, "Yeah, I got these two kids." And what he did with them was fascinating because I saw that first film. They had no experience really playing baseball. And he got both of them signed by the Pirates organization, and they both threw really, really well. And I think it's Renku, I think, Tom said, is a pitching coach now in India. Because I saw Tom a month ago, and he goes, I asked him, I said, how's those guys doing from India? And he goes, they talk to me all the time. And he was like, the one of them's probably the best pitching coach in India. And he goes, he
Yeah,
may be the only pitching coach. And I was like,
yeah. Now baseball is getting big, like
good. That's awesome.
crazy.
That's awesome. Well, that was part of the hope
Yeah,
from that, was that there would be some love
yeah.
created.
Some movement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I guess cricket is big though, right?
cricket is the biggest.
Yeah, because that's what the movie depicts.
Yes,
It's an agent who's losing a bunch of losing a bunch of his clients, and he has an Indian partner.
but okay. Let me tell you this though. If he ran the same experiment now, it would be crazy. I'm telling you. If he
Because
ran the same experiment, because right now, a lot of kids are interested in American football, baseball, and they're starting to play it,
yeah, yeah.
and they're exposed to it a lot. And it's like now, if they ran that experiment, I bet they would at least find 100 good athletes,
Or that, yeah, right,
at
right.
least.
Yeah, because I think what they were looking for, they were looking to see, and that's what I was going to say. In the movie, the way they depict it, the agent guy has a partner who is Indian, and when they're losing clients, he's watching cable TV one night and sees cricket, and he calls him. That's how they depict it in the movie. And he goes, "Hey, how hard do they throw that cricket ball?" He goes, "Well, it's called bowling." He goes, "Okay, but how hard do they throw it?" He goes, "I don't have any idea, but pretty good, I guess. Why?" He goes, "I got an idea." And then he gets these financiers, to go in on financing him to go to India and try to find. And I think they were looking for they were looking for kids to throw 90. And I think they actually threw like 83 and 85. But that was the two best they found. So when they brought him back, I think Tom told me by the time they got signed, they were 93, 94 velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I saw film of them throwing, and I never saw them. I was out there at different times that they were out there, and I never actually
Mhm.
met them, but I heard stories, that they were out there. And
Yeah.
Tom loved them, and the
And
movie, they had a good time.
yeah,
That was really neat.
let me give you an insight about cricket and baseball, right? Like a baseball batter cannot, or it is very hard for them to become a cricket batsman, because in cricket you can hit anywhere,
Right, right,
360,
right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
But a cricket batsman can become a batter very easily, because then you just say, okay, this is the way you hit within this,
right.
right? And you know that's what I felt. And it's like, if you look at the fielding in cricket, it's like so much more athletic. Like, there is so much more sliding, rolling, and jumping. It's like insane, right?
Yeah,
And
I've watched it some, and I have
mhm,
like no real concept of what's happening other than, yeah, it looks super athletic.
yeah,
It really does.
I think like probably in another 5 to 10 years, USA will love cricket.
Right.
You guys have your own team, and they are starting to look competitive, and all they have to win is one or two series, and you'll be like, yeah, We love cricket.
Well, I just saw something. I was just looking over this. I just remembered this now. I'd forgotten about it. Actually, the Rinku Singh is now a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he is
WWE, I guess.
So I guess it's Patel who's doing the pitching coaching because the other one is, and I didn't realize he's 6'4". Holy cow! I did not know. Yeah, I think Tom did tell me that yeah, he was a professional wrestler now.
I think Rinku Singh, if I remember correctly, became a saint, like a Hindu saint.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he retired from WWE long.
Yeah, he's 6'4", 275. He's 37 years of age now. And this picture they have up of him here is a pretty massive guy. Is 2022, and it does say he's a professional wrestler and a former professional baseball player. He was under the ring name Veer Mahan, or simply
Veer Mahan.
Yeah. Okay. So that's him. Wow. He went from baseball to being a professional wrestler. That's awesome.
Then he gave up all the materialistic stuff, and he became.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to say? We'll go ahead and close up here. What else would you like to cover?
Not much. I think we have covered everything in terms of what we wanted to cover.
Well, we had a good talk. I want to keep doing this. If you're good with it, I'd love to keep doing this. I think we have a lot of fun together.
Yeah. And I guess we will make some headlines.
I think so. Do you ever come to the States?
No.
Well, when you do,
I'm planning to.
Yeah, when you do, let me know when you want to go to DC. We'll go do the tour of DC. I'll show you everything in DC. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm serious, dead serious. Let me know when you want to.
I just sent you a reel on the chat. Like, you can look at it.
Okay.
Whenever you want.
Awesome.
That's Rinku Singh now.
Okay. All right. So give everybody your contacts, your podcast, and all that, where people can reach you.
So I run a small podcast called a CPN podcast, and we have done about 80 episodes, and I have had all of the crazy guests and good guests and the best people.
I know what you mean there.
I have had a socialist on. I have had somebody who was like almost a communist, and we have had crazy guests, and this next month we are going to have more good people in terms of history and just understanding India better.
Yeah.
For an American.
Yeah.
And that's what we are pushing. And that's pretty much it. That's what I do. And just search for CPN podcast on any platform and you'll find us very easily. Yeah. And just go listen and, critique us or do whatever that you would like to do. And Jack, thank you so much for having me on the show. And yeah, it was a blast. It was
Ganesh,
very entertaining and awesome.
Thank you, brother. You're awesome. I can't wait to do this again. So let's keep doing some shows. All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you so much.
More to consider. Please like, subscribe, and leave us comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.